Okay, so we're learning the Maimer Lahavin Inyan Rashbi, which the Rebbe said in Tafshin Mem Hey and was Magia and Tafshin Mem Ches. It's printed in Sefer Ma'amor Melukat Beis. We started the Maimer last week, but since there are quite a few people here who weren't here last week, and also last week we stopped in the middle of an Inyan, so we'll do a quick overview. Yeah, the battery went talking. So we're going to make a short synopsis of the beginning, and then we'll restart the last paragraph that we started last time. Okay. So now we know not only you listen, but you made it to the end. Okay, so the Maimer starts Lahavin Inyan Rashbi. Everyone wants to understand what's the Inyan of Rashbi. Right? It's coming. Like Maimer is coming up. We celebrate this day as a major Yom Tif. It's the only day in middle of Sfir Sa'emer when all of the Inyanim of Avelus go off. Rashbi himself said to make we call it a Yom HaElula because he himself said to make this day a very special day, a very happy day. And it's all because of Rashbi. So what's the Inyan of Rashbi? So in order to explain to us what the Inyan of Rashbi is, the Rebbe starts with this idea that we find that based on a Maimer of the Rebbe Marash, that we find that the Tanoim praised Rashbi with awesome praises, with fear-inducing praises, major praises. For example, we find that Rabbi Yehuda called Rashbi Shabbos. The Halakha Shabbos, Rabbi Yehuda called Rashbi Shabbos. And even more than that, we find it says in the Zohar, Man Pnei Adon Avaya Dor Rashbi. What's the pasuk referring to? Pnei Adon Avaya. This is a reference to Rashbi. These are ploistika praises or neiraim, meiredika. So the Rebbe Marash explains that in order to cause somebody to give you something, if that person is be'ein areich, if that person is incomparably higher than you, so what you do is you praise him. And he starts off by explaining it from the meaning of the praises that we sing to the Eibishter. Before we daven, we say Psukkah de Zimra, we praise the Eibishter. It's a question, does the Eibishter truly need our praises? Why do we praise the Eibishter? Does he need our praises? The Eibishter is so much greater than us. Our praises, you would think, are insignificant to him. So why do we praise him? And the Rebbe Marash answers that the Eibishter doesn't need our praises. We don't praise the Eibishter for the Eibishter's sake. We praise the Eibishter since we want to get a hashpah from the Eibishter. And the Eibishter is so much higher than the world, so to speak. He's so much greater than the world in an incomparable way. So in order to draw down the hashpah, the energy that we need to get from the Eibishter, so therefore we praise the Eibishter first, that this should awaken by the Eibishter. By us singing his praises, we are awakening the Eibishter's desire to give us, to grant us what we need. Right? What's this idea of Be'ein Areich? Easy muscle for Be'ein Areich would be Daimin Tzameach Chai Medaber. Right? You could divide the world into four types of creations. You have Daimim, the inanimate creations, things like stones that have no life in them, metal, water. Then you have Tzameach, this is all of plant life. Chai is all of animal life. And Medaber is humanity, or human beings. So each one of these levels are incomparably higher than the next level. It's a very good muscle also because it's hard for us to imagine. Once we say that something is incomparable to something else, it's be'ein areich, so we would think, okay, once something is be'ein areich, so it's completely removed. You think there's no levels in ein areich. So for this muscle, we see clearly that there are levels. There's many different ein areichs. A stone to a plant is incomparable. What do we mean that it's incomparable? You take a stone and you say, can you make the stone better? You take a simple stone and you say, can you make the stone better? Right, so you could polish it. You could smooth it to bring out its beautiful texture. You could get a more beautiful type of stone. You could go from stam granite to marble. Then you could go from marble to precious stones. And then you could go to diamonds. So you could keep improving the stone. But no matter how much you improve the stone, you'll never make from a stone a plant. You'll never turn from a stone into something which grows, into something that gives new fruits. It will forever remain an inanimate object. It has no growth from year to year, from stage to stage. and therefore it's be'ein areich. You can't compare them. If there is one thing that's comparable to the other thing, so if you improve it, eventually you will get to the next level and be comparable to it. When we say that something's be'ein areich, we mean to say that it's in a completely different league. It's in a completely different playing field. It's a different type of thing, and therefore you can never improve to it. And the same thing with a plant. There's the most primitive plants. I'm not a botanist. If anybody has familiarity, what are the most primitive types of plants? But if you go from the most primitive type of plant to the most beautiful type of plant, you still didn't get any closer to animal life. No matter how much you improve a plant, you'll never turn it into even the most primitive animal, even into an ant. It still won't get to it. An ant has life. It's alive. It can move from place to place. And the same thing, no matter how much you improve an animal, human intelligence, it will never have. It will never be medaber. Unless you use ChatGPT. Okay.
There are plants that open and close to eat.
Oh, sure.
But they can't move.
They can't move.
They can't move.
In the
and
sea,
it's,
they could.
it's very much instinctive. What do you mean? They have plants that move?
That
No.
move and eat.
They have the Venus flytrap. If an insect falls inside the plant,
It will
it has
close.
certain acids. It closes and has
I
certain
don't know if it's a
acids
plant.
that'll digest the insect.
No. It's a plant, and you're right. It's true, and it's taka amazing. But you're not suggesting to say with that. You're not suggesting with that to say that. So now it's an animal.
Right.
It's a very advanced feature in a plant, but it's still a plant. So we would think that now we figured this out, yeah? But the thing is that they're all comparable to each other in a certain degree, to a certain sense, because they're all physical things. Take all of these four categories of physical existences and compare them to a malach. Oh, now you're talking ein areich. Suddenly, when you compare them all to a malach, you feel like before, yeah, you were saying they were ein areich, but within ein areich, there's many levels. And all of these together can be put into one category, that they're all be'ein areich to a malach, which is a completely spiritual thing. One malach is greater than the whole world. It's people in this world can't bear the revelation of a malach. Like in all the stories in Nach, anytime somebody saw a malach, he would fear that he would die because it's overwhelming, it's too much. So now you hear a whole other word in ein areich. Okay, so using this, we could try to understand Eis Aleph, that Rashbi, that first of all, in order to bring hashpa from something that's be'ein areich, that's incomparably higher, the thing that's incomparably higher has no interest in the lower thing. So therefore, you have to praise it. You praise it, now you awaken within it somewhere, and we'll see more about that soon. You awaken within it somewhere the desire to give hashpa. But then you have a whole other type of ein areich, like the ein areich of Daimon Smeach Chaim and Daber, of all physical creatures, to a malach. That's a major ein areich. It's a much bigger ein areich, like we can understand. The same thing with Rashbi. The Tanoim had to receive something from Rashbi. There was a certain hashpa that they had to get from Rashbi, that they didn't have, and they had to get it from Rashbi. And therefore they would praise him. And the Rebbe points out in the Rebbe Marash's words that the ein areich of Rashbi to the other Tanoim was bedugmas to the ein areich of the Eibishter to this world. Not chas v'shalom the same thing, but bedugmas. In other words, it was a major ein areich. And in the muscle that I'm using, I'm trying to say that you shouldn't think it's like the ein areich of a stone to a plant, or not even the ein areich of a stone to a person. No, the ein areich of Rashbi to the other Tanoim was like the ein areich of physical things to a malach, to an angel. That's how great, that's how vast the distance and level was between Rashbi and the other Tanoim. And therefore they had to praise him. Okay, so that's Eis Aleph. We'll start inside already. I'll just read 2 lines. The pages, you don't have to turn the page. The Inyan, we're starting from the previous page. The Hinik Siva Isanim Meistiyar, it's the beginning of Eis Base. It says that the Isanim, the mighty ones, are the founders of the earth. And it's explained, Isanim Eisies Tanoim, Isanim is the letters of Tanoim. In other words, that the Tanoim, the Tanoim found the Teresh Shabal Peh, which is called Aretz. What does it mean in other words? The job of the Tanoim is to be Mamshich B'chinas Eison, this level of Eisonim, this level of Eison, into Teresh Shabal Peh. He's going to explain soon what all of this means. But the Tanoim need to draw down Eson into Teres Peh. The next page, no? 2 pages. Right there on the top. Very good. So they need to be mamshich Eson into Teres Peh. V'yeshleimar sham shachas Eson lahatanoim. Where do the Tanoim themselves get Eson from? The Tanoim have to bring Eson into Teres Peh, but where do they get Eson from? So the Tanoim receive Eson from Rashbi. Rashbi was the intermediary and the transmitter of this level of Eson to the Tanoim. Like the Rash explains at length in his Maimer. Okay, so what's this all about? What's this idea that you have this level of Eson? You have the Tanoim and you have Rashbi, and Rashbi brings Eson to the Tanoim. So Inyan will start first with the Shaykhs to B'chinas Eson and Rashbi. What is Eson and what is its connection to Rashbi? The Eson Kaya Letzam Neshama. It's known that Eson refers to the essence of the Neshama, which is sometimes called B'chinas Yechida. The level of the Neshama that's called Yechida, that it's unity, it's oneness. Why? The level in the Neshama, the highest level in the Neshama of Yechida, which is one, completely one with the Eibishter. In other words, a Neshama has in it many different levels. And all of the levels of the Neshama are all about Elikus. A Neshama, Chas v'Shalom, isn't about anything that's not Elikus. But the question is, how much of an identity of its own does the Neshama have? And the other levels of the Neshama have an identity, a certain form, a certain shape, it's a certain idea and concept, the Neshama. It's something that understands the Eibishter. So it's something that has an intellectual capacity to understand the Eibishter. That's a Neshama. It's something that feels the Eibishter, has a tremendous fear of the Eibishter, has a tremendous love towards the Eibishter. So it's something that has a capacity to feel emotions, godly emotions. But it's something with definition. And if it's something with definition, then it can't truly be one with the Eibishter, because its definition gets in the way of being one with the Eibishter. The Eibishter has no definition. Chas v'Shalom to say in the Eibishter any sort of definition. You can't say the Eibishter is courageous. We say L'cha Hashem ha'gedula v'ha'gvura v'ha'tiferes, but we don't say Ata ha'giber. We say L'cha Hashem ha'gedula. We're not describing the Eibishter himself. And when we call the Eibishter things like Chanun v'Rachum, what are they called? It's called kinuyim. It's called nicknames. You say in other places. I was too quick to say. So the Pirush HaPashto and the Ata Giber is not that your definition is that you are a Giber, but you have strength within you the same way. The Pashtus has to be understood that way. You could try to explain a little deeper. You could say on a lower level of a likus, you could already say the word Giber. But if we're talking about the Eibishter himself, you can't give any definition to the Eibishter. So if the Eibishter has no definition, and you're coming to the Eibishter and you're saying, Eibishter, I want to become one with you through my understanding of you, it's not going to work. Thus, understanding. The Eibishter is beyond understanding, even godly understanding. Even if you had the understanding of a Malach, the Neshama has an understanding that's greater than a Malach, in fact. But that understanding can't connect to the Eibishter because the Eibishter is beyond it. So to anything else that you'll try to find can't. What could? It's only the level of Yechidah. The level of Yechidah is absolutely one with the Eibishter. Why? He's going to explain. We'll understand it through understanding Rashbi. And this is the connection between Eson, the level of Yechidah, and Rashbi. Rashbi was completely one with the Eibishter. Why? I am nothing but a sign post in the world. I'm just a sign. Like we discussed in last week's year, a sign has nothing of its own identity. A house has an identity. It's a place for somebody to live. It has an address, a car. Everything has an identity. One of the only things, or the only thing that we could use in this world to understand, say it's something, it's there, but it's nothing, is a sign. All it does is it's pointing you, it's saying, I'm completely bottled to that thing. You want to know where that thing is? It's over there. You want to know where New York City is? It's in this direction. You want to know what the name of this store is? Look at the sign. The sign will tell you what the name of this store is.
Nothing of himself. He's not the Kadosh Baruch Hu.
So he's nothing of himself. He's a sign for the Eibishter. He's like a sign that you see in the street or you see on the highway that says that the city's over there. But the sign isn't declaring anything of itself. Graphics artists will appreciate this, or UX people who need to design a user experience, or you work with machinery. Sometimes you want to have something that shouldn't get in the way of its functionality. In other words, imagine you were coming to create a knob that you turn to adjust something. So you want the knob to be as simple as possible. You want it to have in it exactly what it needs and nothing more. If it's a knob for the safe, for the lock of a safe, to open up the door of a safe, you want it to have in it the numbers, and that's it. And assign which number you're at, vizel. You start adding things, you make it impossible to use. Because it's losing its purpose. All it's supposed to do is it's supposed to be a tool through which you could use its for its purpose. Anyway, it's nicht negah, but it's the same idea of a sign. If you want to design a good sign, the way you design a good sign is that nothing on the sign should be noticeable other than the thing that it's saying. If you make the sign too fancy and you start making flowers and reflective things and you start turning the sign into a work of art on its own, you change the font, that it should be a beautiful font.
They miss the message.
Not only that, they get into an accident. They'll never find the city. You'll say, where's the city? Say there was a sign that you didn't see. You just passed the sign. Oh, that was a work of art. That was a painting. A sign has to be based on it. It has no identity of its own. All it is it says, there's that thing. So Rashbi had nothing of his own. All he was saying is this, I'm a sign for the Eibishter. Furthermore, Rashbi said, I'm tied to the Eibishter with one knot, with the Eibishter I am one, Beilehit, with the Eibishter towards the Eibishter I am passionate. Beis Davakas, and the Eibishter I am attached and connected. In Gimel Halshen's the Blavik, the Rebbe's father explains what these three things are. Aber al kolpanim, taken all together, what is this? Shuha bitul v'hayichut shemitzad yichid. Rashbi was describing the bitul and the oneness with the Eibishter that comes from the level of yichid. This was Rashbi. Rashbi didn't have any identity. All he was something that is completely and absolutely bottled to the Eibishter. Right? We could use a mashal from the Rebbe. Without trying to become too much of a chacham, but anybody who spoke to the Rebbe felt that the Rebbe was looking out for their good and cared about the Eibishter. All the people, no matter from which walk of life, they all walked away from the Rebbe, they were all amazed. And they were all ready to hear what the Rebbe is saying. Sometimes they agreed, sometimes they didn't. But they got the sense from the Rebbe that the Rebbe isn't in it for himself. The Rebbe doesn't see himself, chas v'shalom, as a leader, as a tzaddik, not even as a person. The Rebbe is just a simon of the Eibishter. It's the Eibishter atzmas amahus melubish in a guf, the way the Rebbe said about the Frierdiker Rebbe.
A sign.
A sign. The Eibishter, the Rebbe is just an expression of the Eibishter. He has nothing of his own. He wants nothing of his own. What the Eibishter wants is what he wants. What the Eibishter tells him to do is what he does. How the Eibishter thinks is how he does. And that's why we listen to the Rebbe. If there's somebody who has his own agenda, even if he doesn't have his own agenda, but he has his own way of thinking, he has his own bias, he has his own things that he likes and that he doesn't like. So why should you listen to everything he says? It's good for him. Who says it's good for me? With the Rebbe, it's his thing. Schchina medaberes mit euch greine. What's schchina medaberes mit euch greine? Yeah, if you can understand it backwards and say, this person Moshe Rabbeinu reached such a high level that the Shechina itself, even the Shechina itself was speaking through his throat. Yeah, Rahman Litzlan. In other words, what you're saying is like this. The Shechina is high. And since Moshe Rabbeinu was so high, he was so great, he reached such a great level, so therefore now the Shechina, which is so great, was able to speak through his throat. That's what Shalom Leimer came. The Eibishter is you can't Hashem say anything like that about the Eibishter. Was ist Pshat? Was ist Pshat? Shechina medaberes mit euch greine. Pshat Shechina medaber b'tech kelim is that Moshe Rabbeinu is completely bottled. There is nothing of Moshe Rabbeinu. When Moshe Rabbeinu speaks, there's no teensy drop, anything of Moshe Rabbeinu's personality, of his character, of his thoughts. It's not him. He's so completely bottled to the Eibishter that everything he says is the Eibishter speaking. There's nothing left of him. Is b'derech memela, all that there is the Eibishter. And this was the level of Rashbi. This was the level of Rashbi. And this is why Yechida can connect to the Eibishter. Because Yechida doesn't come to the Eibishter with something. We'll see in the next days. Yechida doesn't come to the Eibishter with nothing, with anything, with any definition. It doesn't come to the Eibishter with smarts. It doesn't come to the Eibishter with refinement. It doesn't come to the Eibishter with courage. It doesn't come to the Eibishter with energy, with ambition. It doesn't come to the Eibishter with nothing. It has nothing. Its only thing is to be connected to the Eibishter. You can't say anything else about it. And that was Rashbi. And since that was what Rashbi was, so therefore he had by him in a revealed way the level of Yechida, and he was able to bring it to others. So let's see weiter. And this is also why Rashbi was the source from which came Pnimiyas HaTeira, which Pnimiyas HaTeira is called Razin Deraisa, the secrets of the Teira, Shem Nishmas Deraisa, which this is the soul of the Teira. Verazin Derazin, and even deeper than that. The secrets of the secrets, in other words, Shem Nishmas, Din Nishmas, the secrets of the secrets. It's Nishmasa Din Nishmasa, the soul of the soul. In other words, the soul also has a soul. Al Derech Hatzachas by the Sima Rambam, I think it was Rabbi Broin who said, there's the meaning of Kal Shebekalim. What is Kal Shebekalim? She said Kal Shebekalim is that when the Kalim have a meeting and a convention and they need to nominate, who do they consider to be Kal? So they say that guy is a Kal. This is a Kal Shebekalim. By the convention of the Kalim, they say this person is a Kal. Of Al Kalpanim, Nishmasa Din Nishmasa. It doesn't explain Nishmasa Din Nishmasa at all. Details, yeah. But just like a body has a soul, and a Neshama has a soul also. There's a deeper level of the soul that is compared to the soul of the body that is the soul for the soul. And just like the soul is so much greater and higher and more spiritual than the body, so too the soul of the soul is a whole level removed and higher than the soul itself. And this is the secrets of the Torah. Once you're talking about the soul of the Torah, you also have in it included Yechida, the level of Yechida. So Rashbi, who he himself lived on the level of Yechida, he was able to reveal Pnimiyas HaTeira, which is the Inyan of Yechida. On its highest level, Pnimiyas HaTeira is the Inyan of Yechida, and that's why he was able to reveal it. Because Pnimiyas HaTeira is the Yechida of the Torah. And not only was Rashbi able to reveal the level of Yechida and Torah, even when Rashbi learned Nigla, which the majority of time that Rashbi was learning Torah, he was learning Nigla, like the Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya. In Gesa Kodesh, when he learned Nigla, he was learning it in a way of Pnimiyas HaTeira. In other words, when he was learning Nigla, he wasn't learning it in the typical way of Nigla de Torah. He was learning it in the typical way of Pnimiyas HaTeira, which is what? To draw down Elikus Milamayla Lamata. He's going to explain himself now. What does this mean? What is the distinction, the differentiation between the revealed parts of Torah and the inner secrets of Torah? Nigla de Torah enclosed itself and became embodied, so to speak, in physical things in order to refine them. Nigla de Torah talks about the shoyr, it talks about a parah, it talks about it talks about a story of an ox goring a cow. It talks about a house, you have to make a Michael Gagecha. It talks about Adam that come and say false witness, bear false testimony. It talks about physical things, and not only physical things, it even talks about the lowest of the physical types of things. And this is, of course, not Chas v'Shalom Kadosh Baruch Hu itself. By the Eibishter, there's no meaning of an ox. In the Eibishter's Chachma, there's no meaning of an ox. In the Eibishter's Chachma, there's no meaning of Ritzicha. It's like we can understand this from Shnaim She'echad in Batalis. It's the famous mashal. in the beginning of the Perek Shnaim Sheichs and Betalis starts like this. There's two people, and they're both holding a talis. They both found a garment in the street, and they're both holding on to it. And they come to Bezdin. Each one of them says that this garment belongs to me. So here we have a sugya in Torah, but we understand that by the Eibishter you don't have a physical garment. By the Eibishter you don't have two people, obviously one of them lying. So what's this idea? Shnaim Sheichs and Betalis, I think it was the Tzemach Tzedek who revealed to us this idea. What's the sugya of Shnaim Sheichs and Betalis Lamaila? In Gan Eden. How do they learn this sugya? In Gan Eden, they learn the sugya like this. The talis is on his shama. The talis is on his shama that was wandering and that was lost in this world and detached, distant from Torah and mitzvahs. And there were two Yidden who influenced it, who influenced the Yid and his neshama and brought him back to tshuva. And both of these Yidden, they stand before Bezdin Shalmaila, and they're both claiming the zchus, the merit of having brought this Yid back to tshuva. Each one of them is saying that I should get the credit for reconnecting this lost child of the Eibishter, taking his neshama, reconnecting him with the Eibishter, with my father. It's like a child who wants his father to love him, and he says, "Look what I did for you." This is the sugya Shnaim Sheichs in Betalis Lamaila. And this is in the way they learn it in Gan Eden. So we see already it's not the same thing. We could see how both it's the same idea, but we could see how the idea lowered itself and became transformed from holy spiritual things and from arguments about spirituality and doing what the Eibishter wants into arguments over a physical garment. This same Chachma, having been lowered into this world and enclothed in physical concepts and ideas, became Shnaim Sheichs and Betalis. And the Eibishter's Chachma goes much higher, because the way that Tzemach Tzedek explained this sugya is the way they learn it in Gan Eden. However, the Eibishter is higher than Gan Eden, and it's the Eibishter's Chachma. It's not Gan Eden's Chachma, it's the Eibishter's Chachma. So by the Eibishter, it's even higher. So when we talk about Torah, and we talk about the physical things that Torah is talking about, we have to understand that this is not the essence of Torah. It's not the way Torah really is on its own. This is the way Torah became enclosed in physical things. Why did Torah become enclosed and embodied in these physical things? Because the Eibishter wants them to be refined. The Eibishter wants the talis to be refined. The Eibishter wants the liar to be refined. The Eibishter wants the ox and the owner of the ox to become refined. And in order to refine them, he took his own chachma, his own Torah, and lowered it into these things, so that now we could take these things and use them in accordance with Torah. And Bezdin could paskin the din of the talis and the din of the liar in accordance with the Eibishter's chachma, and say that you physical things are going to act the way the Eibishter wants. And this refines them. And that's what the Eibishter wanted. The Eibishter wants them to be refined. That's the idea of nigla. What's the idea of pnimiyas hatera? Masha'enkim pnimiyas hatera hilamana mislapshus. Masha'enkim pnimiyas hatera. For those who've learned Kabbalah, which I have not, but everybody has at least glanced in Kabbalah. Yeah, the night before a bris, at least we glanced in Kabbalah. So it says over there like this. I think, if I'm not mistaken, they ever spoke about learning Kabbalah outside for the coming of Mashiach. You familiar with that? I don't know. Not a major limud that they never established we should learn. But I'll a little bit of limud Kabbalah, if I'm not mistaken. Verify it before you repeat it. Aber I'll doesn't
mean Chassidus?
But specifically Kabbalah, of course Chassidus, but specifically Kabbalah. As I can't place it right now.
Chassidus is higher than Kabbalah.
Oh,
Sure.
yeah. The Rebbe Rashab said that Kabbalah is a marshal of Chassidus.
Exactly.
Very good.
Okay.
We can't get into the Gan Sairich Sadvarim because it's like a confounding statement. Yeah, but perhaps by the end of this Maimah we'll have a few more Asias to explain why. But Chassidus is Pnimiyus HaTorah. It's not Kabbalah, but it's Pnimis HaTorah. So it's part of what we're discussing in this moment. What Rashbi was Megala Pnimis HaTorah, not Kabbalah, but Pnimis HaTorah. About Kapan, getting back to the subject over here. This is from Pnimis HaTorah, which is higher than Islapshus. Mashenka Pnimis HaTorah, L'maylam Islapshus. Pnimis HaTorah is the Chachma of the Eivish, like you see in the Kabbalah's from Seretzich wegen Zachen. In some shuls, they have a minute to read. I don't know if it's just Shavuos, but on Ta'aluch, as I walked into a shul, they're sitting over there, they're reading Zohar. It's by the Sfardim, and it's a tired thing. You see Yidden, and they're reading these holy words, Malachim and Eiris, and things. You don't know what's flying, but the Eir is shining. It's a filz chazay heilig kazach, but it's not talking about a shur, not about the talis, not about the liar. It's not Mislavish. It's a Eir that came milamayla. Even in other Sfarim of Chassidus, in other words, the name Elimelech, the Talis, and so many of the other Sfarim that were written by the Polish Chassidim that aren't Chassidus Chabad, you can't compare it to the level of understanding that you have in it with your human mind, that you can understand it as a human being. You don't find it at all in the other Sfarim of Chassidus that are outside of Chassidus Chabad. So you see over there even more in those Sfarim and in the Sifrei Kabbalah, you see even more how Pnimius HaTorah is beyond enclothing itself in this world. It's not embodied in this world. It stays beyond it and above it. So if so, it can't refine this world. If Pnimius HaTorah stays higher than the world and it doesn't discuss things in this world, so it can't refine this world. So why do we learn Pnimius HaTorah? It's primarily not in order to refine the world. It's to draw down, to bring down this light of Pnimius HaTorah into this world. Okay, so there's two different parts of Torah, not different chas v'shalom, but Torah came down in two different ways. Pnimius HaTorah, which doesn't talk about this world. Instead, it just brings down the spiritual light of the Torah into this world. Then you have Nigla de Torah, which is a complete opposite. You don't see so much the light in it. You see that it's talking about physical things. It's talking about a cow. It's talking about blood. It's talking about animals. It's talking about physical things. And what did we say before? Why did we get into this subject? Because we said that Rashbi learned Nigla in a way of Pnimius HaTorah. So now he finally comes to explain it. When Rashbi learned Nigla de Torah, you were able to see the Pnimius of the Torah. In other words, if you were to be sitting with Rashbi and learning about the Shor Shemal Gachas Hapara, you wouldn't see a Shor. If you were learning with him Shnai Mechazim Betalis, you would see the Neshama. You wouldn't see the Talis. You'd be talking about a Talis. But you would see in his study, you would see that Seretzich over here it's a Talis, it's just a word. The Teichin, the Pnimius of it, would shine through it. You would see Seretzich Vegen Neshama. And so too in all subjects of Torah that Rashbi learned, his learning was in a Eifin that you saw the Pnimius in it. And when he learned Nigla, he not only refined things in this world, he actually also brought down a likus godliness milamayla into this world. This is the advantage, the greatness of Rashbi relative to the other Tanoim. The Chol Tanoim, all of the other Tanoim, they either primarily learned Nigla or they primarily learned Pnimius HaTorah. The Reva Tanoim, because the majority of the Tanoim, they learned Nigla. Like it says, the Mari Kabbalah Mu'atim Hayu. It says that there were very few who learned Kabbalah. Rav Yehuda, and we find even some Tanoim, Kuli Tanoim in Ezikin Haba. Rav Yehuda, not only that he didn't learn, that most of his study, or all of his study was in Nigla de Torah. Which part of Nigla de Torah itself was it? It was in the dinim of Nezikin, the dinim of damages. Not in the dinim of Trumas, not in the dinim of Karbonis, not in the dinim of Shabbos, in the dinim of Nezikin. In other words, the lowest of the low of this world. People, cheaters, gamblers, thieves, violent people. Rabbi Yehuda learned, that was his whole study was in the Torah that discusses these types of things.
We see that the Rashbi is called Bechavrayo. I mean, it wasn't just him. It was a chavra. It was a society of, because
100%.
they see in the Kabbalah is different. There's different tanoim that are mentioned there.
That's right.
Pasach so and so, Pasach.
And so there were also Tanoim, like we're going to say in a moment,
But
to
the
learn
chavra, there were chavraya. There was a certain
brotherhood,
brotherhood, a society of
society. Correct. But
So there was the
they-
Hasidim. Originally, the Baal Shem Tov, before he was Megala, was also chavraya. Was also secret.
right. But the
Well,
other
yeah.
members of the Chevraya learned primarily Pnimius Hatera. They didn't learn both
Okay, so they associated more with Reb Shimon Bar Yochai's.
with the
Yeah.
Pnimius Hatera. He's going to say in a moment. Give it. Pasha, he's going to say now. The chelik zeh shebetern slaps mit vorn hat gitachten swel maza gash mi gofinan and zik in tanis so shaka bechul bechil var gam netes shebetvarn mail. This part of Teres Rabbi Yehuda learned, like we said before, the people talks about cheaters and gamblers and liars and thieves and murderers. So the Torah lowered itself into these concepts in order to be able to refine the sparks of holiness that are there also. And then you had a different type of Tanaim, like you were saying. The Elu sheikar asakam hayibenister the Torah. Then you had a different category of Tanaim who primarily would learn Nister, primarily would learn Pnimis HaTorah, what's called Ma'aseh Merkaveh, Lehayu Oiskim B'Nigla Kol Kach. They didn't learn so much of Nigla. They weren't K'may. Rabbi Nechunim ben Akana, like Nechunim ben Akana Shechi b'Sefer Akana, he was the person who wrote the Sefer Akana, Sefer of Kabbalah.
The Bahir, was the author of the Bahir.
Sefer Abayit. Could be.
Bahir,
Sefer Abayit.
Yeah.
So you wrote two Svarim, saying. Okay. But he also wrote Sefer Akana.
Oh.
We hear you mention Sefer Akana.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Hari ben Nigla the Torah move him in Rakmaat. So Rabbi Nechunim ben Akana, we have a whole entire Sefer in Kabbalah from him. However, when it comes to Nigla, you find very few mentions of him in Dinim of Nigla the Torah. And this is the distinction. This is the uniqueness of Rashbi. How he was different from all the other Tanaim. Not only did Rashbi learn Pnimius HaTorah on a much higher level, and he wrote the Zohar, and he learned Pnimius HaTorah much higher than all of the other Tanaim, than the whole rest of the Chevraya. Why? Because like we said before, he was on the level of Yechidah, and therefore he learned Pnimius HaTorah not on the level of Razin Deiraisa, not on the level of the secrets of the Torah, but on the level of Razin Dirazin. The things that were secrets, even to the Chevraya who were learning Pnimius HaTorah, he learned those secrets, that to them was secrets. But we find something much greater. That what else did Rashbi do? He also learned Nigla the Torah. He was also a master of Nigla the Torah. And not only that he learned Nigla, he drew down the light of Pnimis HaTorah and Nigla. In other words, like we said before, when with him you learned a sugya of Shershin Agach Sapara, or a sugya of a home and a maika and a sugya of all of the physical things, you felt and you saw and you heard the chachma of the Eibishter, and it's not the physical things and the details of the practical laws of the physical things. It's not what's explained in the pasuk in Shiras Ha'azinu. That Machatzti, I have wounded, I have crushed and wounded, the Eibishter says, Vani Erpa, and I will heal, Shalidei Rashbi, through Rashbi Nisrapa, V'nispatla HaMechitza, Shemen Gali Detel, Sasim Deiraisa. Machatzti is from the Lashon also of a Mechitza. And there was a Mechitza until Rashbi came along, from the time of Matan Torah until Rashbi came along. There was a Mechitza, there was a barrier between the hidden esoteric parts of the Torah and the revealed parts of the Torah. And Rashbi healed this mechitza. He healed this barrier. In other words, he removed the barrier. Because really it's Torah Achas. It's one Torah. And if there's a separation between Pnimius HaTorah and Nigla the Torah, so it's unhealth. It's a lack of health. It's not good. And Rashbi is the one who came and healed this by removing the barrier between Pnimius HaTorah and Nigla the Torah. Until to the level where to Rashbi, the revealed parts of Torah and the hidden parts of Torah are all one. And this is, as a side note, in my personal experience, this is the geschmack that I have in Sichos, dafka more than in Ma'amarim. It's my own hergish. It's not sourced anywhere. But when you learn a Sicha, you see this fusion of Nigla the Torah and Pnimius HaTorah much more than you see it in Ma'amarim. In a Sicha, the Rebbe makes fuses the Pnimis Atayah and Nigla Atayah.
He
Okay.
says, he says this is Yenish Torah,
And it all comes together though as one beautiful thing, all together. All right. One more ice. All right. Val Pisa Yuvan. It's just a good break point. Dal is a good break point. Val Pisa Yuvan. So according to the above, and let's not forget how we got into this whole conversation. That we're talking about Yechida. How was Rashbi able to do this? Because Rashbi himself transcended all definitions. Rashbi didn't come with his own definitions, and therefore he was able to fuse between Pnimiyas Atayra and Nigla Atayra, because he wasn't bound in any specific thing. It was one thing by him. It was the Eibishter. It's the Eibishter's Torah. So if Pnimiyas Atayra is the Eibishter's Torah, and Nigla Atayra is the Eibishter's Torah, and he is nothing but a simon of the Eibishter, so why is there any problem bringing it all together? It all comes together. It's not a problem. So since this is what Rashbi was, that he was at the level of Yechid, and that's how he was able to achieve all of this, so you and Sheila Rashbi will be able to understand that the Mila of Rashbi compared to all of the other Fnaim was a Mila of Bein Areichem, like he mentioned earlier in the Maimer, that within Ein Areich was bedugmas the Ein Areich of a Beira to a Nivra. Because Rashbi was in the level of Yechida, which is one with the Beira, and everybody else wasn't able to reach that level. They were in to one level or another, a holy thing, but a thing, not one at the level that Rashbi was. Therefore, since there was such a great distance between them, or like in the muscle we said, right, like between them and a Malach, completely distant. So they had to get a son. They had to get Yechida. They also knew that it's the Eibishter's Torah. They also wanted to reveal in Nigla Torah that it's all Pnimiyas Torah. And for that, they had to have somehow Yechida, they should be able to bring it into their learning. And they didn't have it on their own. They had to get it from Rashbi. And therefore, that's why they had to praise him. The Rebbe explains now this line and a half. The Rebbe is going to go to the end of the ice, to the end of the chapter to explain it. The advantage and the greatness of Yechida compared to all the other four levels of the neshama is a ilisha be'ein areich. In other words, even though we typically say that between nefesh, roch, neshama to the level of chaya is already a ein areich, nefesh, roch, neshama is keches pnimiyim. Chaya is a makif, and that's already be'ein areich. However, all of them together, just like Daimim, Tzemeach, Chaim, and Dabar all together, are be'ein areich to a malach. So using that as a mashal, derech ze nefesh, ruch, neshama, and chaya are all be'ein areich to Yechida. They have no comparison. You can't put them together in the same category in any way, shape, or form. And we could also understand it from the name that Teres Emes gives it, which is a lashon yachid. They say it's one, but in English, do you have a word for yachid as opposed to one? Right, in Lashon Kodesh, you have yachid and echad. Echad means one. Yachid is oneness. I don't know. It's unity.
Unity.
But singular. Oh, thank you. Taka. That's a good word. It's singular. Yechida is singular because when you say one, what you're saying is that there could be two, there could be three, four. This is one, but there could be more. Yechida is singular. There's nothing else. That's why it's called Yachid, because you can't say that there's Yechida and then there's also other things. All the other things don't exist compared to Yechida. They're not of the same quality. They're not of the same type of thing. And therefore, you can't say that there's this and this and that. There's only one thing. Yechida exists onto its own. Nothing else exists next to it. There's nothing second to it. All of the other things are way, way lower, lower. Even though Yechida is a Nivra, it's not Eibishter. It's a nitzitz of a Nivra. It's a spark of the Eibishter, but the way the spark of the Eibishter became a creation. So we're saying that Yechida L'chora is not so be'ein areich. Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chaya are all creations, and so too Yechida is also a creation. So maybe we could say that they're on the same level in some way. In other words, going back to the muscle, what we're trying to say is that the difference between Yechida, the Ein Areich, is like the Ein Areich of a malach to animals and to plants and to stones and to people. Where even though each one of them is Be'ein Areich to each other, the plants are much greater than the stones, than the inanimate objects, and the animals are much greater than the plant life. and the people are much greater be'ein hareich. To the animal life, nevertheless, all of them together are all be'ein hareich. They have no comparison whatsoever to our malach because they are all physical and they have a physical embodiment. And the malach is purely a spiritual existence. It has no body, and therefore the malach stands up on its own. You can't put him in the same category as any of them. So, we can't say the same thing when it comes to Yechida. You would think, because Yechida is a creation also. So there is a commonality between Nefesh Ruach Neshama Chaya and Yechida, that they're all creations. Says there, but no. And this is a deep word. It's an edel word, and it's a yesodistic word. So he says like this, right? I didn't finish the Rebbe statement yet. Furthermore, all of the levels of Yechida are in which level of the neshama there? And the level of the neshama that has a connect, that's enclosed in the body. These words I don't understand that it's there, enclosed in the body in a way of shame, of a name. That the neshama has 5 names, so Yechida is also called a name. But what's the significance of a name? In other words, what's they saying? What do we see from the fact that it's a name? I don't know, but we'll continue. I'll hope on it. Nevertheless, there's something that you need to understand about Yechida that sets it up completely and entirely apart, even though it's a creation. Why? The entire idea, entity, existence, identity of Yechida is what? That it receives from Yachid, that it receives from the Eibishter. In other words, it's a nitzutz nivra she'inyanehu mashaboy mislabish nitzutz beire. The entire definition of Yechida is that the Eibishter encloses himself in it. He doesn't have his own thing. He doesn't have his color. He doesn't have his flavor. He doesn't have his taste. He's not seichel. He's not midas. He's not action. He's not greatness. He's not humility. He's not nothing. He's one thing and one and only one thing. He is something that the Eibishter encloses himself in. The Zel. He doesn't have anything else to himself. You ask Yechida, what do you want? He says, what do you mean, what do I want? I don't want anything. What am I? I'm not. There's nothing. It's something that the Eibishter enclosed himself in. Beyond that, there's nothing to talk about when it comes to Yechida. And therefore, it's completely be'ein hareich. Because of this bittul that it has, because of this nothingness that it is, it's a shtik Eibishter the way it became a nivra. It's a shtik Eibishter the way it became a nivra, you could say, for lack of better ways of distinguishing it. In other words, once you say it's a shtik Eibishter, so you're obviously not talking about the Eibishter. So that's why it's a good eizog. It's a shtik Eibishter. Chas v'shalom, you can't say it's not Eibishter. It's not, but it's not anything else either. It's a shtik Eibishter. It's a good way of saying it.
That's why we refer to Chaya and Yechida as makifim. They have nothing
But
to
this
do
is-
with the inside.
Yeah, but Chaya has its own definition. There's a whole
I'm
world
saying, but
going on.
There's makifim though. They have nothing to do with you. With
True. But here he's saying a different word. Because like we said, Yechida is be'ein hareich even to Chaya also. So you can't put them in the same category, even though they're both makifim. The fact that they're makifim doesn't make it Yechida yet. That just makes it something that's higher than Chaya,
But
Nefesh Ruach Neshama.
Isn't the general rule in Chassidus that there's mamala and there's makif? So mamala is something we can understand. Makifim is something we can't understand.
Yes.
It's beyond us.
Oh, good, very good. Well said. It's beyond
Yeah, beyond
us.
Yeah.
It's beyond us.
Yeah.
It isn't beyond. It's beyond us.
Yeah.
The Eibishter is not upset that he's beyond us. The Eibishter is beyond any possibility of definition.
Of us.
It's not what you're saying is like this. There are things that we can understand. There are things that can be understood, but we cannot understand them. That's makif. And then there are things that are not in the category of being understood. And that's already higher than makif. What he's saying is that Yechida belongs to that world. You understand the distinction? Why it's not a makif. Even though it's grouped together in the makifim, it's called a makif only in the sense that it's not a pnimi.
Okay.
But it's not like a makif of Chaya at all. Because a makif of Chaya is also a level. Yechida is not a level. It's something that the Eibishter encloses himself in, and that's it, and no more. So this is all talking about the Yechida of a Yid. Because when you're talking about the Yechida Klolis, in other words, the Klolis Haishtaus also Mikos came to Teira. When we're talking about the level of Yechida of Teira, now we have a few more aces to understand the Nishmasa Dinishmasa. It's higher even than Nishmasa Deiraisa. It's Yechida. It's not a Nisham, it's a Yechida. Well, it's coming Migufa Deiraisa. And certainly Yechida is higher than the body, in other words, than Nigla de Teda. Hainu ha'alach is the Teda Shnikran Gufite, which is called the body of Teda. And therefore, since the Tanoim had to receive this high level, not high, this far removed level of Yechida, Chinas Eis and Yechida from Rashbi, or Befat, the Chinas Aptimis, Shabzah, Helam, Shalatzerich, Asma, which we're not going to get into. But it's the deepest parts of Yechida, Sheyumshach Belimud Atera, Nigla de Teira, Badlan Zikin, the Tanoim wanted that this revelation of the Eibishter, this level of godliness, should be brought down into their study of Nigla de Teira. They wanted their Nigla de Teira to be imbued with and full of and shining with the light of the Eibishter, with this level of Yechida. The Tanoim knew what's really going on over here. They knew that it's the Eibishter's Teira, and there's nothing more that they wanted. They want that the Eibishter should shine through in their Teira. And for that, they had to draw down into it the level of Yechida, but they couldn't do it on their own. They couldn't do it on their own because they weren't at that level. Their study was they were doing a different work that the Eibishter had set out for them, which was to refine things in this world, but they wanted to draw down into it the level of Yechida, the oneness of the Eibishter into it. So therefore, they had to get that from Rashbi, and in order to get that from Rashbi, they had to praise Rashbi, because in order to be able to awaken and to gain the interest and the desire, the will of the person who's incomparably higher than you, to give you what he has, so you have to praise him. You achieve it dafka through praising him. And the Mitzvah Hashem, next week we will learn why does praising him bring down this hashpah. That's an open question we didn't discuss yet.
Well,
Shkoyach.
yeah.